Suit up, strap in, warm the tires, and leave on yellow. Time for the MitsuTimes podcast, presented by MitsuTimes.org, the home of the fastest Mitsubishi cars. With your host, Josh.
Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Josh with the MitsuTimes podcast. Today, my guest is Luca Barberis. He is the winner of the Grid Life Laguna Seca event. How are you doing today, Luca?
Hi, Josh. How's it going? I'm doing good. How about you?
I'm great, man. First off, I got to say congratulations. Man, I went back and watched a lot of the videos. What an event. I mean, it looked like it was packed there, and there was all kinds of cars. You had some tough competition.
Yeah, thank you very much, first of all. It was kind of a once-in-a-lifetime event, or at least it seemed that way to most of the competitors. So all the heavy hitters really tried hard to make that event happen. Pretty much all the podiumers and strongest competitors in my class showed up there. Just being able to say that I've driven Laguna Seca, which I think is a bucket list item for any person who has the slightest passion for cars, is incredible. And it did not disappoint. It definitely exceeded all expectations, and you know that the expectations were high for it.
So I'm sure you've driven it a million times in video games. How did it compare to real life?
Well, this might be a bit of a surprise, but I'm not the biggest sim racing person.
Gotcha.
Obviously, I have driven it on various Forza or Gran Turismos.
Right.
And obviously, it compares very well. It definitely helps to. It's not like I didn't know the track. I think we all dream that track at night and know exactly where we are and what we're doing on it. But the elevation and just the sheer camber in some of the corners of where you can actually throw the car in and find heaps of grip is just something that's so raw that I have not felt in simulators. But I also don't have a $5,000 or $6,000 simulator at home, so maybe once you get into that spectrum of sim rigs, you get a better feel for it.
Yeah.
But I felt at home immediately. Yeah.
That's so cool. So what is Grid Life? Maybe you can give us a little glimpse into what the event is.
Well, Grid Life as a racing body is, I would say it's a newer entity among the NASA, SCCA, and whatnot. It was, if I'm not mistaken, it was born from the creators of Honda Meet, and it just gained a lot of traction because they had a little bit more of a relaxed approach to racing, but yet they are highly organized, and I think they focus a lot on attracting media, and therefore it just creates a ripple effect that, if you participate in the Grid Life series, you get a lot of exposure, and that's factual.
Now, I mean, I think it goes without saying, since we're talking about Laguna Seca, but this series races at some of the biggest tracks in the country. Exactly.
And that's the thing. It all started with local tracks in Michigan and the Chicago area, and it's now a nationwide racing body. I mean, they raced in New Jersey and California and throughout all of the Midwest this year. And we got a glimpse of next season's schedule, which we can't share just yet, because they're going to have they're going to disclose it at PRI in, 2 weeks' time.
Nice.
But it's just getting even crazier for next year. So
that's awesome.
It's really incredible.
I have to make it out to one of these things.
You do, yeah.
So
unfortunately, they used to have the National Corvette Museum, which is, I guess, closer to you.
Yeah.
But that's not been on the calendar for 2 years now, sadly.
Okay. I've watched the 24-hour lemons there once. It seemed like a hard track to pass at.
Yeah, definitely. It's a lot of consecutive and tight turns and elevations and blind corners.
So is Laguna Seca like the finale for the Grid Life series?
Yes, correct. That was the finale.
Okay. Well, let's get into your amazing Evo that took this win. Why don't you tell us about the setup on it?
All right. Well, this might be a surprise, but I am on a stock block with stock rods and pistons.
Oh my gosh.
Yep. The car is built almost to the maximum of the rule set for street class and grid life. That means that it has to be on a stock turbo. That's just because we're limited to flow rating, which is capped at 41 pounds per minute, and the Evo 9 turbo pretty much tickles that limit, and so there's no wiggle room there. We're limited to 25 pounds of boost, limited to tire section width, tire tread wear, stock body aero, and also body panels. You're limited to which body panels can be of a different material other than OEM. But the main setup in the car is suspension. I'm running the SSB drop knuckles this year, which were a huge game changer. I'm on Fortune Auto 510s, and that's actually not quite maximizing the rule set because this year I was allowed to go up to two-way adjustable coilovers, but we didn't really have the budget, or we didn't feel that it was necessary just yet to upgrade, since we hadn't even touched the limit on those. Like we just started getting into adjusting them and then figuring out what our preferred setup was.
Okay.
And then other than that, I do have a 6-point cage, so the car is stiffer than than it would be from factory. You are technically supposed to have a full interior from the B pillar forward, but my door cards are trimmed for the cage, so they allow removal if it is for safety. And I remember weighing the car before we removed all the parts, and it was 3,100 pounds. And once we gutted it and put the cage back in, it was, guess what, 3,100 pounds. So, yeah.
That's really
Other
cool.
than that, I mean, just it has a mildly built head, ARP head studs. We do have ARP rod bolts as well, because we did the bearings just preventatively when in the past my oil pump was showing signs of failure. And then just like a 2.5-inch intercooler piping into a 3-inch ETS intercooler. I have a full-blown, I think it is an 80 mil throttle body into a Skunk 2 Pro intake manifold, ID 1700s injectors, and that's pretty much it.
So really, I mean, nothing too crazy. It sounds like anybody out there with an Evo could really match this setup.
Yeah, well, one thing that I was almost forgetting, I do have the Infinite Evo oil pan, since that's a big thing for tracked Evos, is oil starvation in fast sweeping right-handers. So I was running the race fab oil pan previously, and then this year I upgraded to the Infinite Evo, and we're seeing very steady oil pressures at all tracks.
Good deal.
In the beginning, I had a couple hiccups with it, but it was just I could not believe the amount of oil that I had to put in. It's almost 7 quarts. So.
Wow, jeez, it's like a diesel truck.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, you have to do it. That's probably one of the first upgrades that I would recommend if you're getting serious about tracking your Evo. Even if you're just mildly tracking the Evo, it seems that oil starvation in right-hand corners is a real problem.
Wow, that's interesting. So, Luca, what is it that got you into time attack racing in the first place?
Well, I've had a passion for cars since I was basically a toddler. And my mother reminds me that my first word was car and not mom or dad. So I think it's been a straight trajectory since then. I've always enjoyed going fast. I used to ski race up to a professional level in Switzerland, which is my home country. So I went to a Swiss Olympic Ski Academy and everything.
Wow.
Big into gravity mountain biking, whether it's downhill or enduro. And they're all tied together. They all work with speed and finding lines and finding grip and trying to accelerate out of turns. And it just falls into place, in my opinion. it was really almost a natural transition or complementary passion,
To get into time attack.
Yeah. But then again, being from Switzerland, car racing there is extremely expensive. So you're not going to, I see kids here who are in high school who have like cool cars that are, trackable, and like that's never going to happen in Europe. But as soon as I got out of college and I had my first job, I bought a mini John Cooper Works. I lived and worked in London back in the day, and I tracked that car for the first time at Snetterton Raceway, which is an amazing track. And ever since, and then shortly after I moved to Detroit, and I bought a Golf R here, so I started doing just some HPDEs here in Michigan with 3 balls, auto interests, and the Waterford Hills Racing community. And I remember just learning a bit, hearing about grid life, but I was still new to it, and I was just doing local track days. And then I stumbled upon the Evo that I currently own that was for sale in Chicago. And ever since, the Need for Speed games, even though I said I'm not a gamer, but I did have car games in the past, and Evos have always had a special place in my heart. And I stumbled upon this Evo, which was for sale in Chicago for $24,000, which is crazy thinking about what they're going for today.
Yeah, no kidding.
And in what condition that car was in, which was, about 80,000 miles, but absolutely mint with the electric blue paint. It had white T37s. It had all the bells and whistles. It was very well put together. It already had a TRE transmission and just AMS parts. It just, I could not resist not getting my hands on that car. And so I got that car, and ever since then I started tracking it, and that's when I realized what a problem Evos are. But because of that car, I really learned so much, because granted, before I moved here to the U.S., I had never done an oil change myself. So that had to change, and this car really just opened a whole community to me that I had not, tapped into. I met some of the greatest people, and I'm also lucky that some of the greatest people are local to Metro Detroit, who handle Evos and 4G63s. I was introduced, actually through Grid Life's first event that I attended, I was introduced to promoter Ravi, who was a fellow Evo owner, and he introduced me to his tuner, who was a rather famous tuner in the DSM and Evo community. His name is John Ryan Hishak, also known as DSM Raver. Yeah. And honestly, without John Ryan, none of my time attack career, if we want to call it like that, would have happened.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, because you need extreme expertise, I feel, with these cars. It's very easy to upset them and to break them. Mm-hmm. And his knowledge is just so extensive on them, and he was able to he's kept my car alive for the 5 years that I've owned it now.
Makes it go fast, but keeps it together.
Makes it go fast and keeps it together. We have never, and I'm knocking on every piece of wood that I can right now, we have never pulled the motor on that car.
Wow, that's amazing. That's really amazing.
And again, like, we have had a series of issues. That's just part of the game with these cars. But like, he caught the oil pump just starting to fail. Nothing had happened, but he just saw little signs here and there that something was up, and he was right, and I would have never caught that. And I mean, I would have caught it once you heard the crunch.
Right.
And then it's too late. So having people like him is necessary.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's so amazing.
But going back to the original questions, like, how did I get into time attack? So I was still doing HPDs even with the Evo when I first had it. But at that point I had already accrued a certain experience. So I was doing advanced HPDEs and getting a little bit frustrated with the advanced groups. As a lot of people know, there's a lot of people that sign up for advanced but then don't have the proper track etiquette, because it's not based on horsepower, it's based on track experience, right? And so I was just getting a little bit frustrated, and then I started looking into time attack, and I was like, you know what, that just looks like an advanced HPDE session that has official timing and scoring, and everybody on track truly has experience and knows what track etiquette is like. And yeah, it just seemed like a logical progression also to what I wanted to do. Good deal.
So this Evo, when you went to Chicago and got it, I mean, obviously being from Chicago, it had those AMS parts. That makes sense. What kind of condition was it in? I know it was low miles. Was everything pretty much bone stock besides the few modifications here and there?
No. It had a Garrett T3.
Oh, really?
It had a very old setup, but that made a lot of jam. I think it was making 450 wheel horsepower on pump. Oh, wow. Rather unsafely, though, once John got his hands on the ECU. He saw like, oh. But no, it was pretty heavily modified in terms of like just bolt-ons. Again, it had the big AMS F1 intake manifold. It had a full tile wastegate blow-off valve. It had this Garrett ball bearing turbo. And yeah, it had the full titanium Tomei Extreme TI exhaust system. Suspension-wise, it was just on some H&R coilovers, nothing crazy. But you could tell that the car had been tracked. I mean, yeah. The person who previously owned it was definitely tracking it. But it was built properly. It wasn't clapped out.
Good deal.
Yeah. Minimal rust, because I looked up the history of the car. It was originally a Pennsylvania car. So it had a bunch of CBRD goodies on it, too. Ah. So that's proper OG, right? Yeah. And then from what I could find out, I think the first owner drove it to San Diego. I think he was a military person. And then from San Diego sold it to somebody here in Michigan. And then the person in Michigan sold it to Exclusive Auto Exchange in Chicago.
Wow.
And that's where I got it. Yeah.
It's made its rounds.
It's made its rounds.
Well, that's awesome that it had that many owners and was still in really good shape. You don't find that very often.
Yeah, no. But once I got into time attack, the car kind of sat the way it sat in street mod per the rule set, because it had the bigger turbo.
Oh, okay.
And everything. And so the first 1.5 years of competition, I did time attack in street mod. So I had the big wing. I did a big splitter. And all that stuff, but I quickly realized that I did not want to, like, in order to be competitive, I had to like build the motor and start pushing 600 or 700 wheel horsepower.
Yeah.
And that's just not something that I wanted to do. I was always, I like to call myself always the fastest of the poorest in that class. So I was able to consistently be in the top 10, like I think I placed fifth or fifth and sixth a couple times, which in that class was pretty good for what the car had. So I knew that I was competitive, but I didn't want to do the financial leap to be competitive in the class. And so I decided to join the street class and make the car a little bit more stock, but join a class that was a little bit more competitive in my opinion. But that was a little bit more budget friendly.
It's probably a little bit more fun to drive going, on stock turbo and stuff like that too, I would think.
Yeah, it just, less things to worry about. Aero is quite the black magic. So, yeah, and I think driving a car that's more just mechanical grip, even though Evos do have aero, from factory, it's not nothing. The rear wing does generate downforce and whatnot, but it's not something that you have to truly set up your coilovers to accommodate for the squat at 140 miles an hour.
Yeah. Interesting. So what kind of modifications and tuning strategies do you guys use to get the most out of the Evo for these time attack events?
Well, tuning strategies, that's an interesting one. We actually ran the whole season at a target boost of 23 psi instead of 25.
Oh wow!
We just turned it up for Laguna Seca. Primarily, again, we the car is competitive. We were winning with what we had, and there's no reason to push the car unnecessarily and risk things. So the strategy was actually pretty conservative. It was step by step, setup. I would say that the setup was the main focus this year. Really figuring out first how these drop knuckles handled, and I felt very natural with the new setup very quickly, and then through the help of another crucial buddy of mine, Austin Goetz, who is the co-founder of Wunderland Racing. They make a bunch of Evo suspension and performance parts. He's basically my crew chief and follows me around, and he's been helping me with setting up bump stops and just droop and all the suspension setup necessary.
Huh.
So that really worked out the best, because even though we were down on power compared to what the car was previously pushing, we absolutely destroyed times that I had set when I was back in the street mod days.
Oh wow, that's interesting.
Yeah.
So a little bit less power, but more, I guess, a better setup, and you got quicker times than you had before.
Yeah. Aero is a very tricky thing. I remember at Road America, I was maxing out at 140 miles an hour just because of the aero drag, and this year I ran at Road America again with less power, but I was hitting 152 on the straights. So that makes a huge difference. Another big improvements that I did on the car this year was I went with the Pro Bearing ceramic wheel bearings, and those kind of free up a lot of power, Yeah,
but I've heard
even John, when he first put the car on the dyno, and he's obviously had this car on many dynos over the past 5 years, he was like, "Oh wow, I actually have to hit the brakes on the car to get the car slowed down because it just keeps rolling."
Yeah, a lot of people swear by those wheel bearings.
Yeah, it's definitely it's a good investment. They will last for a long time, and they free up power. So it's little things like that really make a difference.
Yeah, devil's in the details, right?
Yep.
So, Luca, you think, looking back at it now, if you could start over and still do the build with the Evo, that's what you would do?
Yeah, I believe so. I guess the only thing that I would change maybe is I would go with Chromoly for the cage just to save a little bit of weight, but it was not in my budget, so it's not like it's trying to cry over spilled milk.
Right. That stuff's not cheap.
Yeah, no, I didn't want to do a lesser cage and go with a lighter material, so I just did the cage that I wanted. The very skilled people up at TRF in Traverse City who build rally cars, they built the cage, so I know that it's a good cage, and that was my main focus. Obviously, with a bigger budget, we could have gone Chromoly and then saved a couple pounds, but honestly, the Evo platform is hard to shed weight on without compromising things. I still have the OEM rear crash bar. I run the STM front bar. I just don't like the idea of the frame rails floating, even though I have a cage. In the off chance of anything happen, it keeps the chassis together, because the sheet metal on these cars is really thin, and it's just not worth it.
Yeah.
If I start losing by 1/100th of a second, then maybe I'll drop those things. But until then, it's not worth it.
Yeah.
I think the lightest Evo, Austin from Wunderland, his Evo is 2,800 pounds, and that's very, very gutted. Like all the doors are gutted.
That's about what drag evos are weighing with 25-point cages.
Yeah.
Wow.
This episode of the Wild Evo podcast is brought to you by Wild Evo, the world's fastest Evo. Help support us by visiting wildevo.net and purchasing merch. We have shirts, hoodies, hats, stickers, and much more. You can help keep us ahead of the competition with your support.
This has been a paid advertisement approved by the Wild Evo.
So what do you think it is about this car, Luca, that keeps you motivated to keep pushing it and keep finding those minute changes that you need to go faster and faster?
Well, it seems like this platform just keeps evolving, even though it's 20 years old. It's still showing, it's demonstrating that you can still push boundaries with it. And again, we're not quite maximizing the rule set just yet. There's no cap on a built engine, and of course, I joined Street Class to not build my engine, but that's all my competitors are on built engines, whether it's Subarus or Evos. They're on 2.2s or higher compression 2 liters, or the Subaristas. They're all on IAG or forged blocks 2.5s. So there's room for improvement there. And then this year I will be upgrading to 2-way suspension. So hopefully we'll see even more improvements from that perspective. And then also the main reason why I'm sticking to the Evo is because, first of all, we have not maximized the potential, and also like the amount of money that I've poured into it, I would not want to start over on a new platform.
Yeah. Don't want to start with a blank slate.
Yeah, no.
So, Luca, what would you say the strengths and the weaknesses are of the Evo when it comes to time attack racing? I know you talked about earlier the oil pickup is not ideal for those long right-handers. Is there anything else that anyone who's looking to get into this type of racing should be looking for?
As you mentioned, I would definitely say that the weakness is the right-hander oil starvation. Primarily, that's due to tire technology just getting so much better. Like 200 thread wears are now performing like slick tires, and these cars were street cars out of the factory, and they were never intended to push this much lateral force, right? So that's why you have to put modern parts on to compensate for the modern technology that's giving you that grip. Another big deficit is definitely understeer suspension setup. You have to do a lot to these cars to get them to really get easy on rotation. Again, the drop knuckles were a game changer, but also a rear diff. I have the TRE race rear diff. I also have an English racing tune on my stock front diff, but it just makes it engage a little bit more aggressively and lock sooner, from what I understand. So there's a couple of weaknesses like that, but there's solutions to all of them. And in terms of strengths, the motor, the motor and the chassis. It's such a visceral experience to drive these cars. I know you have a lot of drag racers on. I unfortunately feel that this platform is a bit wasted in drag racing, simply because of how incredible it is through corners. Right? Obviously, then the entire chassis puts power down, and that's why it's being used in all these racing forms, which is great. But I do believe that it really comes alive on a racetrack. Also just the steering rack ratio, it's so direct, and as a Sunday car, I have a bone stock AP1 Honda S2000, and that comes pretty close in terms of steering feel. It's more raw from other like the shifting is a little bit more crisp, and the car is obviously smaller, but I feel that the steering feedback from an Evo is unparalleled.
Yeah, if we're all being honest with ourselves, the Evo was really meant to go around corners instead of going in a straight line.
Yeah.
So, I mean, Luca, like you said, there's going to be a lot of drag racers listening to this. So I want to go over the basics of the difference between time attack and what we would call traditional circuit racing.
Okay. Well, time attack, the easiest way to explain it is it's basically like Formula One qualifying. I don't know if your listeners are big Formula One fans, but it's basically you're just running against the clock, but you're on track with other people. You can be gridded, released on track based on lap times or based on class. They've been doing a bit of both this year in the Grid Life series. But a big change that they brought this year to the time attack series is that at the festivals they have a shootout now. So it's like in Formula One, you have to progress or qualify to basically position yourself in the top 5, and then the top 5 get to run head to head.
Oh, wow.
You get 2 hot laps each, and all your previous times get deleted, and you have to, like, the podium times will be set in those 2 hot laps.
No kidding.
You put 4 off and you're disqualified. There's you block anybody, you get in the way of anybody, you're disqualified. So the stakes are high, and I thought it was a brilliant idea because it keeps the weekend alive. In the past, sometimes we just set the fastest time on a Thursday evening, and then you're just trying to chase that time for the rest of the weekend. So even from a spectator point of view, it was rather boring. Compared to traditional circuit racing, obviously we're not going wheel to wheel, right? There are instances where you are fighting for position just to get a clear track, or the person in front of you is just like upsetting your times, and usually there's pretty good etiquette on that. And then if you get a point by, like, the person will let you by, or you give them a flash and they get the memo. But you're never really diving head to head into a corner for position. That's not something that you would see, and that would be strongly frowned upon, I would say.
So in a typical weekend, Luca, how many laps are you probably putting down?
Good question. I want to say that I do at least 5 to 6 laps per session, depending on the length of the track.
Okay.
And we do up to 6 or 7 sessions throughout the entire weekend.
Okay.
Yeah, it depends how much is going wrong with your car.
Yeah.
At Laguna Seca, I definitely did more than that, just because we traveled so far. I basically completed all the sessions from beginning to end, just because it was such an incredible opportunity to be there. So I wasn't skimping on being tactical. I was just there to run as many laps as I could.
Got to get your money's worth.
Exactly. Yeah. It was expensive, let me tell you that.
So, Luca,
but worth it.
If someone out there is listening and they want to get into time attack racing, what advice would you give them so they could get started on the right foot?
I would definitely start with HPDEs. They're called high performance driver education, but they're basically open track days, and that's the best way to do it. Most organizations that host open track days, they have instructors on site that are usually just included with the cost of the weekend or the day that you're doing, and that's where you're really going to get your bang for the buck. You're going to be able to progress at your own pace. You're going to have support if you seek it, and it'll just allow you to take step-by-step improvements and then work up from, like, novice to intermediate to advanced, learning track etiquette and just getting more comfortable with your car, getting to meet people that will help you make your car faster or safer. I would definitely prioritize safe over fast in the beginning. Typical thing is just brakes, brake pads, brake lines, good tires, safety equipment. Those are the main things to start off on, and work your way up. Some people get the gist of it really quickly, and they feel comfortable getting into competition within the arc of 2 years or so, and others take more time, which is fine. I would definitely not try and rush into competition if you're not fully comfortable with it.
So hit up the novice events and get your feel for the car before you hop straight into something like a Grid Life.
Yeah, I mean, Grid Life actually does host open track days as well. So in terms of like track time, I would say it's not as great of an experience because there are so many other races going on during the weekend, but it is a very cool experience nonetheless because you actually get to see what you are working up to, right?
Yeah.
So you get to see GLTC, which is their wheel-to-wheel sprint race series, and then you get to see time attack cars and all sorts of heavy hitters show up. You have Ferraz Hortuni and his monstrous Corvette. You have hopefully Professional Awesome will be showing up with their Evo time attack car next season. They seem to drop hints that car will be making a comeback, so that will be nice. But that's the thing, you get to experience all these incredible machines firsthand if you participate in the open track days in Grid Life.
Get a little bit of everything.
Yep.
So, Luca, what is a typical day at the track like during one of these events? I mean, we talk, obviously we know drag racers, they're probably, working on the car, replacing clutches every day. Their circuit racers are probably, repairing damage from the previous day. So what is it like in a time attack day?
Well, it starts off with the bright and early drivers meeting, where you can just go over track rules and where you're supposed to grid up, like all the necessary information to get the day started and get everybody on the same page so that things move as smoothly as possible. And then depending on the weather or whatever, I would just go back to the car, check, set my cold tire pressures first thing. And the hope is that I roll up to the event with the car ready to go, right? Yeah. So usually tire temps, and tire pressures. Just tire pressures is the first thing that I set in the morning. And that first session is going to be crucial just to come back and see where you're at with hot pressures and then dial it up or back accordingly. And then just, a lot of just focus until your first session gets called. I usually grid up like between 10 and 5 minutes prior to our release, get the car warmed up, check the fuel level, which has happened that I've gone out with just a little bit too little fuel. I've never been stranded, but it will cut out, and left-handers actually, Evos tend to cut out if they're a little bit low on fuel. But yeah, just, usual TLC, you torque your wheels, you just go over everything, check your oil level, and that's probably a good thing, and then you just go out and if the day goes smooth, you're probably never going to touch the car. You're just going to be adjusting tire pressures and keeping an eye on things, but usually they're smooth sailing. However, I cannot say that this year has been anything like that for me. At the first event at Gingerman Raceway, which was a rush in itself because we blew a turbo on the dyno 2 days prior.
Oh my gosh.
So that's a story in itself, but we made it. We made it to Gingerman thanks to the shop that sponsored me, where we do all of the upgrades, which is Alex's Automotive in Chesterfield, and with John behind the keyboard until like 5 a.m. We got the car put together, and I show up there, and the car was running great. It felt incredible, but the track was a little bit slippery, and through a really fast corner, the car opened up on me, and I was able to catch the drift, but just where the car was pointing was off track, and so I tried to mitigate and try to get the car slowed down and point in a safe direction. But as soon as I dropped the tire off in the grass, with the car being so low and the oil cooler still being in the stock location, I punctured the oil cooler. So I made it back into the pits, and then I realized that I had a hole in the oil cooler, and then I had to call everyone that I knew who might have had a spare, and Austin from Wonderland, who will come up in many stories for this season, since he was basically my on-site crew chief. He brought me his front mount oil cooler set up from his car, which was a prototype he had put together. And he arrived like at midnight at Gingerman Raceway, and we were swapping oil coolers until like 3 a.m.
Gotta love it.
In the first session, I went out. We didn't even put the bumper back on, because we were just like, go out for a hardship lap, see how she does.
Yeah. And
I mean, the car felt absolutely phenomenal. I laid down a 137.6 or 2, I forget. Anyways, a blistering time without even the front bumper, and there were no leaks and no nothing. And yeah, just incredible that we were able to put the car back in one night and then go back out there. And then more issues happened, like my ethanol sensor died, so then the car was leaning out like crazy. So thankfully the Haltech guys were there, and also again John Ryan. We just we took an ethanol tester, and it tested 80%, so we just locked in the ethanol reading to 80, manually, so that the car the tune didn't compensate, because it was reading 0 from the sensor that had died.
Oh Lord.
So that was another thing, little things like that if you don't pay attention, if you don't have safeties in place, that could have easily been a season-ending catastrophe. So
something that small cost you an engine for sure.
Yeah.
So I'm always curious. This is more of a question for me, I guess, than for the benefit of the podcast. But in time attack racing, since you're not, like you said, going bumper to bumper, wheel to wheel with your competitor, how does that change the interaction with you and the other racers? Is there still some tension, or are you guys kind of all comrades and friends? How does that work?
I would say comrades and friends overall. There have been instances where, again, you get gridded by lap times, and as you get faster throughout the weekend, you get to get gridded better or in faster run groups. And there's been situations like at Mid-Ohio last season, I snapped my throttle cable, which was again a very interesting repair job. But I wasn't able to put a lap time in, right? And so I got gridded with the Sunday Cups, which are basically bone stock Honda fits. Oh. And I was catching them off throttle down the main straights. So that was actually pretty dangerous. And in fact, they don't do that anymore. If a substantially faster car has mechanicals but makes it out, they just release them at the end of their run group and not with like the slowest group, because that's just it's very difficult to navigate a field of cars that barely make it over 100 miles an hour.
Yeah.
Doing $150 into China Beach.
I can't imagine going 100 mile an hour in a Honda Fit.
Yeah. But then there's also situations like at Laguna Seca, I had my fastest lap of the weekend was actually very interesting. I had Kyle Magnuson, who is in Street GT. We're always very close lap time wise, but our cars excel in very, very different parts of the track. So it's a bit of a seesaw action, and we get really close sometimes, but it's I think we both know it's okay, so it's not really that distracting. Like in the corkscrew, I felt like I was about to jump into his wing from my perspective. But yeah, so we do go almost wheel to wheel if you trust the person in front of you, and it's just part of the game,
Yeah.
It happens, and if the other person is on a hot lap and you're on a hot lap, no one's just going to give up their hot lap for you, because you're both still competing.
Right. But the chances of a fight breaking out in the pits are probably pretty low.
Pretty low, yeah. I've had an instance which was, again, like when you're going really fast and shit happens in front of you, blood tends to boil rather quickly.
Yeah.
I was dealing with a Corvette that had gone off track in front of me, and they had sprayed mud all over my front windshield. So I was just trying to see where they would end up back in front of me. And unfortunately, a person who was starting their hot lap behind me in a very fast street motor car, they didn't see that happen. They just saw me putzing around the corner slowly, and they got very, very, very angry very quickly with me. And so that had to be mitigated in the pits by the Grid Life staff. But then again, just explain the situation, and then both parties understand. And,
Yeah.
The main reaction was just like he got so scared about almost crashing into me. And
Oh, for sure.
obviously my focus was not on who was coming behind me, but what was happening in front of me.
Yeah.
I could not place myself in an intelligent way, unfortunately, or in a strategic way.
Hard to do with your windshield covered in mud.
Yeah, it's just but stuff happens, and I've never really seen anything, any bad behavior on track. Everybody's there for the same reasons. Nobody's we're all grassroots people. Spending an exuberant amount of our own money just to go play on track. So
That's what it's all about.
Yeah.
So, Luca, I mean, you finished the season obviously very successfully. What are your goals for next year?
Well, I actually finished the season in second place by 2 points, the overall championship, which I lost to my very good friend and extraordinary driver, Joe Mielke. He had an exceptional season. He did 5 points races this year, and they always take the 4 best results.
Okay.
So it's not like the more events you do, the more points you get, the easier you win. Yeah, he had an exceptional season, and he's one of the very few people that actually does everything himself. Like, he tunes his own car, he works on he rebuilt his transmission twice this season. Like, hats off. I mean, and an incredible driver. He really takes big risks that I'm sometimes not even capable to to put myself in the same situation. He's a very deserving driver, but obviously next year I would like to take the win for myself.
Absolutely. So besides the well, I guess we should talk about. Are you planning to do all the Grid Life events, or are there certain ones that you plan on making for sure?
That's I have not decided just yet.
Okay.
What events we're doing. It depends on pricing and maybe some potential sponsorships that might come, especially from PRI, where Grid Life will be disclosing the new season and whatnot. And actually, my car will also be on display at PRI if anyone wants to stop by and say hi. The car will be at the Go Fast Bits. They're a new sponsor for the season, and I'm having their parts installed right now. So that's going to be really cool.
Yeah, I can't wait to see it in person.
Yep.
So besides the handful of Grid Life events, is there any other events that you plan to attend next year?
I keep saying this, but I have to make it actually happen. I would like to drive my car in the current setup at the local tracks, so at Waterford Hills and Grattan Raceway, which is a very fun track. So maybe a couple just HPDEs, open track days. Those would be nice.
Yeah. But
it's always hard to it's always hard to make it happen because you're kind of saving the car for competitions. Right. So you're still going through consumables and you're still spending a lot of money that's not going towards competition. So sometimes it's just hard to commit.
And potentially
usually that's something that would happen towards the end of the season, but this year we had Laguna Seca at the almost end of October, so I had to keep the car intact for that.
Yeah. Well, it was definitely worth it in the end, huh?
Yeah, absolutely. Just the experiences that you get doing this stuff, and especially the people that you meet. It's absolutely invaluable. Very incredible community, especially for me coming from Switzerland and being new to all of this. It was eye-opening, and I'm very appreciative of how welcoming it's been here.
Good deal. So, Luca, where can people find and follow you on social media so they can see some more of this Evo?
Yeah, so I have a dedicated Instagram channel for the car. It's timeattack_Evo9, so pretty straightforward. That's pretty much where I post most of the stuff. Obviously on my personal Facebook, and I post some stuff as well, but on Instagram is where you see all the updates, where you see all the posts, all the photographs from the various talented photographers that follow Grid Life. That's where you'll see all the content for sure.
Good deal. Well, Luca, at the end, I always give people a chance to give a thanks or a shout out to anybody who's helped them out along the way. Is there anybody that you want to give a shout out to?
Yeah, I mean, it's a pretty long list of people that help out with the car, so I hope I don't miss anyone. But first of all, Alex Tatopoulos from Alex's Automotive. The car is at the shop there. That's where we do all the upgrades and the dyno tuning with John Ryan Hishak. Definitely, if there's any Evo people out there that need tuning advice or help, hit up John Ryan Hishak. Austin Goods from Wonderland Racing for being an exceptional crew chief and basically always being under the car this season and keeping the car going at the events. And then all the sponsors like Fortune Auto for their great support for the season and the great products that they make. Braid Wheels USA. I think they make some of the best looking proper racing wheels that you can buy. And then Falcon Tire for their support. They've been very helpful, and they even allowed me to paddock with their big team rig at Laguna Seca, which was a really great experience. Go Fast Bits, obviously, for being new on the program and inviting me to showcase the car at their booth at PRI. And then Pro Bearing for the very fast wheel bearings that definitely made a difference. Haltech, they're a big supporter, and they also were on site at some of the events helping figure things out. And then who else? Also a shout out to Infinite Evo, the oil pan manufacturer. He's been very easy to work with, and I was one of the early adopters, so we had a bit of a back and forth with the oil pan and trying to figure out how to optimize it. And they did some changes to the pan and sent back a revised version. So that was incredible. Incredible customer service. And then also Artec Performance. I run their stock replacement exhaust manifold and O2 housing. They sent me the exhaust manifold information before they even released it, so it was very cool to be involved with that as well, and see what they're doing. And then in general, just the Grid Life people, the organizers, and my Grid Life track family, which there's a bunch of people there. It's too long to mention, but one of them is Joel Mielke, my frenemy, and Mike Calloway, Nick Alpin, and all the guys there. And then obviously my girlfriend Brooke, who puts up with all this and supports me, which is a big task.
Not easy.
Not easy, nope.
All right, well, Luca, thank you so much for taking the time to come on here. Congratulations again. I can, I hope that we get some more people at least interested in Time Attack, and hopefully.
As do I.
Yeah, I mean, we get some more Evos out there.
Absolutely, yeah.
And
not over yet. These
absolutely.
Will go on forever.
And I will see you at PRI here in a few weeks.
Sounds good. Yeah, looking forward to that.
All right.
Thank you so much for having me on.
Absolutely. I'll talk to you then.
Sounds good. Cheers.
Thank you for listening to the MitsuTimes podcast. check out our Instagram and Facebook for daily updates. Get added to our list by going to MitsuTimes.org and clicking Submit a Slip. Thank you to all of our sponsors.